politicians have been working on this problem for 5 years. Nothing ever happens because they don't understand this is the only way. They want to give incentive. So Carrier's going to say to me, well, we're not going to do it. Good. I'll say good. Very good. Tax. Now here's what happens. Within 24 hours, they will call back. Mr. President, we've decided to stay in Indianapolis, where you're going to have a good football team this year, by the way, in Indianapolis, Indiana. We're going to stay in Indiana, Mr. President. We've decided to stay. Because let me tell you, when you do what I say, they want to leave, it's fine. But there have to be consequences when they leave. You know, my whole life, I'm a business person, so you'll understand this. My whole life I take. As a businessman, I take. I'm greedy, I take. And you know what? Now I'm taking for the American people. That's what I'm going to do. No, we're not going to let this stuff happen. We're not going to let this stupidity happen.
So
there's a lot to this.
Yeah, there is a lot to this.
And so we've got some details we're going to break down. There are some interesting, as we go through the details of the actual plan, I want to go back to some of the things that he said in that. Because he was the big, strong businessman who knew exactly how you have to deal with Carrier. He's not one of these weak, ineffectual politicians that simply gives away incentives. He has consequences, not incentives, consequences. So let's talk about some of those consequences that he did. So he announced on Twitter, big day on Thursday for Indiana and the great workers of that wonderful state. We will keep our companies and jobs in the U.S. Thanks, Carrier. We'll keep our companies and jobs. Now that is light on details. For instance, what percentage of the jobs that we're going to be taken away are you keeping? That implies that we're keeping the company, we're keeping the jobs. Hooray, A+, we have what we want. Turns out not actually the case. The company originally put more than 2,000 jobs at risk, 1,400 at an Indianapolis plant, and 700 at a Huntington plant owned by Carrier's parent company, United Technologies. Fewer than 1,000 will remain even after the deal. So already, less than 50% of those who are going to go are supposedly going to stay. That is best case scenario. Now, I don't know that we will see what ends up happening, that it will be reported in the media, or that we'll even notice. I guarantee far fewer will actually end up staying here. It's all well and good on day one of some supposed deal to say almost 1,000 jobs were saved. We've covered a lot of companies, and we know the sort of shenanigans they get up to. I guarantee far fewer jobs will actually be saved. A little bit more details for you. Neither side has officially released the terms of the deal they struck, and the union that represents the workers at the plants wasn't involved in the negotiations and doesn't have any information on the deal. Get used to that, by the way. Unions are not going to be consulted in Trump's America. Now, we're going to give you some more details. I want to give you a chance to...
Yeah, I think that you were right in beginning this story with there are pros and cons. And the clear pro is the fact that Trump managed to convince them to keep some of those jobs in the United States. Mm-hmm. Now, I just want to give Trump a little bit of credit, okay, because this was actually a very smart strategy by him. Because, okay, the reason why I'm saying that is because in place of a robust, comprehensive, and quite frankly, different economic policy than what we've been seeing, he has now latched on to one specific case where he can go back to over and over again and say, I kept these jobs here. Now, keep in mind, this is in Indiana. Mike Pence had leverage, okay? There's other leverage that we're going to get to later. And again, there's a lack of transparency when it comes to this deal. There are some things that we know, but there's a lot that we don't know in terms of what happened behind the scenes. But I do want to give Trump credit because he did something that I think Democrats can learn from, right? Democrats could have done the same thing, right? Like, they can... Okay, so I know I'm kind of stepping on your feet a little bit here by giving this information, but there was the issue of government contracts involving this company, right? And so all you do is you tell them, these government contracts, I'm going to take them away from you if you go ahead and move these jobs to another country, right? Obama could have done that. Democrats could have done that, but Democrats don't do that. Now, again, this is not enough. This is not going to save all these manufacturing jobs in the United States that are either being, shipped away to other countries or just all out ended because of the fact that we have advancements in technology and we need high-skilled workers instead. But nonetheless, it was a smart strategy, and I think that it speaks volumes to the electorate who many of which don't have the time and the resources to get into the weeds and the details like we're doing right now.
I will agree with you. It's a smart strategy. I do not agree on why it's a smart strategy.
Okay.
I think that you and Cenk your predisposition is to attempt to be fair.
Mm-hmm.
And I think, look, he mentioned...
And that's wrong.
And that's
we're not winning by trying to be fair.
Wrong. So he mentioned that supposedly he threatened to take away the government contracts. And that's what he said in that video we sent you that he would do. But did he actually do that? I don't know. Mm-hmm. And whether he did or not is irrelevant when you put it on the side of what else he did to keep these companies here.
Okay, so...
And what he did is shower them in money.
So you're about to list those things. And before you do so, I want to preface the rest of this conversation by letting you guys know, overall, I do not agree with what he plans on doing with the economy. Again, this is like a tiny, tiny Band-Aid on a huge problem that we're facing in this country. So
here's some details. Carrier will be given financial incentives by both the federal and state government to keep those jobs in Indiana, which best case scenario is fewer than 1,000 jobs. Previous reporting noted that the two sides were discussing Trump following through on plans to reduce a corporate tax rate. We will talk about that shortly in the show. And implement a tax repatriation holiday. Now, we've done this before. The last time the country tried such a tax holiday, the evidence showed that companies simply used it to enrich their shareholders rather than invest in American jobs or the economy. Many even laid workers off in the process, and certainly we've seen that any number of different times. In addition, at an April rally, he pledged to impose a 35% tariff on those air conditioning units. That penalty appears to have disappeared in negotiations. So, best case scenario, more than half of the workers will still go to another country. And the tariff that he was all big and blustery about, that I'm going to put consequences on them, is gone. There will be no consequences, except that they are going to be given money at both the federal and state level to stay. So he said the weak politicians have been trying through incentives to keep jobs here. He then goes and gives them huge quantities of money, which is both very easy to do. Every company has a price amount of money you can give them to keep jobs here. And secondly, this is a businessman supposedly who's done all of these jobs ostensibly with his own money. We know that he inherited it, but whatever. It's sort of his money that he's been using up until this point. Now, he doesn't have to use his money in these business deals. He gets to use your money in these business deals.
Okay.
So if he gives $10 million, $100 million, $1 billion to Carrier, what does Donald Trump care?
It almost sounds like it's big government.
It almost sounds like it.
Okay.
Because regardless of the amount, he gets to say, I kept Carrier jobs. Regardless of whether those jobs actually end up going to Mexico anyway. It could turn out in a year that every plant Carrier owns is in Mexico. His followers will still say he got Carrier jobs here. The media is not going to report on it if they end up pulling back on this deal. And they don't have the tariffs, and now they get a whole bunch of tax money as well.
Yeah, so let me comment a little bit on the financial incentives that they were given to stay. So, first of all, if evidence comes out, and I believe that this is true based on what I've read so far, that Trump threatened this company by threatening to pull government contracts from its, parent company. Yes, which was to the tune of $873 million. That was a recent contract that they were granted. Well, okay, so that was a good strategy when it comes to this particular company in terms of saving like 50% of the jobs, maybe, right? But not every company, not every corporation has contracts with the government. So what do you do when it comes to those corporations, which are also shipping jobs abroad? Another thing that I wanted to mention is that, look, again, this is taxpayer money that they're using to subsidize these businesses to convince them to stay. This will be used as a tactic in addition to tax cuts, which we will get to. And so that is beyond costly. And keep in mind, that is your money that's going toward keeping these companies here in the United States. And he wants to cut their taxes. He wants to deregulate them. He wants to do away with things like minimum wage, right? And so it will have a disastrous impact, not only on our economy, but the average American worker. And he also has failed to address the issue of technology advancing. I was reading this report about, the manufacturing industry and how there are many jobs. one report stated that there were 2 million jobs that will go unfilled because they're looking for high-skilled workers. But unfortunately, they can't find the high-skilled workers, right?
Yeah.
And what does he want to do? He wants to privatize education, right? He doesn't even emphasize about college affordability or anything like that. And so where do you get high-skilled workers from if we don't emphasize education? So look, this is again a very small thing to kind of distract us from his lack of a robust, comprehensive economic policy that will actually work.
Yeah, and a couple of quick points I want to make. So again, as we've both been saying, although for perhaps slightly different reasons, this was a good strategy. He wants these quick, easy wins that will be blown out of proportion in terms of how much credit he'll get. And he's willing to do almost anything, I would say, to get that. Now, I want you to briefly put yourself in the point of view of a person who has a company and is considering outsourcing. After you see this, after you see that simply by threatening to move a couple of thousand jobs abroad, you are showered with money from the federal coffers, what would you do if you were a business owner?
If I was a CEO, I'd be like, I'm going to move all the jobs to Mexico.
10,000 jobs to Mexico.
A million jobs
so
to
that
Mexico.
You can have money showered on you. You also have the fact that, and I mentioned this in our production meeting, he's been talking about Carrier now for like a year. I don't know that he knows how many companies are in this country. He seems to actually think that if he puts months and months of focus, as if it was a business he was buying out, that will fix all the problems. Okay, maybe you saved 800, 900 jobs. Maybe, theoretically, best case scenario. There are hundreds of millions of jobs in this country, and he thinks so small, I don't know how he's going to be able to stop the wide-scale outsourcing that is all too common, and we know the simple fixes you could make to stop it that he's not willing, of course, to make.
I think in a lot of ways, Trump is not a smart guy, okay? But I think in a lot of other ways, but in other ways, he is smart, okay? Because he will latch on to one thing that looks super shiny and super positive, as long as you don't get into the details and the nitty gritty. And then he also very successfully distracts from his wrongdoings by tweeting something offensive and something that he knows the media will be distracted by and will focus all of their attention on. And so that's the reason why a lot of people, buy into his BS, because they'll look at a story like this and they'll be like, look at that, he's keeping American jobs here, right? Yeah. And then at the same time, anytime he is caught with his hand in the cookie jar, like the $25 million he has to pay in that settlement for Trump University, no one pays attention to that because we're too busy talking about Hamilton. So he's actually, look, I gotta keep it real with you guys. He's actually a lot smarter than people think.
Okay, in terms of his strategy.
Yes.
In terms of the economics, one final point. Once we know the final dollar value that Carrier is given, both in just straight money being handed in big bags to them and the corporate tax cuts that they're going to get, when that happens, I want you to do some very basic arithmetic. I want you to take those $10 million, $50 million, $200 million, whatever ends up being, and I want you to divide that by the 800 jobs he just saved. And you will quickly see it would be far, far cheaper simply to give $200,000 to every one of those workers than paying far more to the company to supposedly perhaps keep them employed for another year or two. He is a terrible businessman if what he is trying to actually do is business. Anyway, let's move on to the tax plans that we've been alluding to. If you listen to the mainstream media spin on Trump's pick for Secretary of the Treasury, the upcoming changes to our federal taxes sound pretty good. If you simply let him talk about it and don't analyze the numbers, it sounds like maybe the middle class is gonna do okay for a while. The 1% is going to receive the sort of disproportionate benefit they have under past Republican presidents until you read one paragraph about the actual plan. And so we're going to play for you a little bit of Steven Mnuchin, Trump's Treasury Secretary, and then we're going to break down what is actually going on.
Any reductions we have in upper income taxes will be offset by less deductions so that there will be no absolute tax cut for the upper class. There will be a big tax cut for the middle class, but any tax cuts we have for the upper class will be offset by less deductions that pay for it. But should I donate to charity this year then? I mean, what are you going to do? It'd still let you do charities, but there'll be other tax cut.
Really really interesting that on the side of that video they had their street cred box. It was, what are his credentials for getting this job? And it said that he was the chairman of a Trump finance committee.
Yep.
Do you know why they put that instead of a whole bunch of experience in governing or making economic policy? It's because he doesn't have any of that. All he did was raise millions of dollars for Donald Trump, and now he's in charge of the federal treasury. That's a great, great idea. I think no fear of terrible consequences coming from that.
He's also John Oliver's evil conservative doppelganger, right?
He might be.
It's kind of amazing.
An evil bird. So he says there, not an absolute tax cut for the richest people. That is not vague. That is, you can check that. That's something you can demonstrate whether it's actually happening or not. And then huge tax cuts for middle-income people. The problem with that is that they've actually put out the details of the tax plan, and so we're going to break them down. The Tax Policy Center estimates that under Trump's most recent plan, this is information that came out in the past 3 or 4 days, the average net tax cut for the highest income 1% of households would be $215,000 in 2017. That's not even the total taxes you get back. That's just additional tax cuts. The top 0.1%, who don't get talked about enough, who make north of $3.7 million, would enjoy an average tax cut of more than $1 million, in addition to what they were already saving under the lingering Bush-era tax cuts.
I want to cry, because as you were reading that graphic and you mentioned $700,000, I was like, oh my God.
Can you imagine?
Can you imagine making $700,000? That's so much money.
Can you imagine just being handed an additional $1 million a year?
And then you mentioned the 3 million figure, and I was like, oh my God.
Can you imagine she had that? So Stephen Mnuchin said that there wouldn't be an absolute tax cut. There was an absolute. It was absolute BS coming out of your mouth, because we just saw what's actually going to happen for them. They're going to make a tremendous amount of money. But he also said something about the middle class, that that's where you're really going to get into the big tax cuts. Well, let's look at that. TPC estimated that middle-income households, those making between $48,000 and $83,000, would get a tax cut average of about $1,000, or about 1.8% of their after-tax income. Now, look, if you make $50,000 a year, do you want a $1,000 tax cut? Of course. And 1.8% more pay is certainly nice. It does not by any means dwarf the $200,000 to $1 million that many of the wealthiest Americans will be getting under this new tax cut. Now let's quantify it, directly compare. Middle-income households would get about 6.7% of the total tax cut generated by this new plan. By contrast, the top 1% would get nearly half of the entirety of it, and the top 0.1% would get nearly 1/4 of the total benefit, and their share would only grow over time. Now, you listen to Mnuchin. Is that what he described in his plan? No. What you have there is just George W. Bush 2.0. It's more of the same. It's the big tax cuts go to the 1%, and actually screw most of them. The top 0.1% are the ones who see the biggest gains.
So even though in that video it's clear, based on the evidence that we have, that he was lying about the huge tax cuts that the wealthiest people in this country are going to enjoy during Trump's administration, he couldn't help but allow a little bit of the truth to come out regarding the deductions that middle-class people get to enjoy the most, right? And so he talked about the deductions that you get for charitable giving and the deductions that you get for your mortgage interest rate, right? So you pay interest with your mortgage, obviously, and then that's deductible. So they're going to do away with that if they have their way. And so, yeah, the wealthy enjoy that tax deduction as well. But in terms of the middle class, we don't get many deductions. We barely get any deductions, right?
I wouldn't worry too much, because generally when they talk about cutting rates but closing up loopholes and deductions to make up for it, generally only half of that ends up being true. That's
true. And so, Mnuchin has said that they're planning on cutting the taxes and simplifying the tax code, which of course would benefit the wealthy the most. But he's like, but don't worry. What we're going to do is get rid of all these loopholes.
Yeah.
No, they're not. That's Republican trickery 101, right? They always say they're going to do it. They never do. We're supposed to have the highest corporate tax rate of all industrialized countries.
I've heard that.
Yeah. We actually have the lowest effective tax rate because of these loopholes. They're not going to do away with them, especially when you consider who he's filling his cabinet with.
So when it comes to, maybe some are limited, some loopholes, some things you can go around, there's ways around loopholes that are around loopholes, right? But the majority of middle-class people, I'd say probably damn near all, depending on where you are in it, have to figure all that out.
Yeah.
These people making 3.7 million plus a year, do you think they go to TurboTax? You say you go on the computer and go, okay, I have to spend this $45 for my TurboTax.
That's what I did.
Can't wait to get it back in the mail. No, it doesn't work that way. They have attorneys, they have accountants that do their work for them.
That's true.
Because it's complicated
Yes.
to access all the things that are in the code that they keep talking about. You put on one sheet of paper.
Yeah.
They're not talking about one sheet of paper anymore, are they?
Yeah.
But even if you put on one sheet of paper, make it so easy to do all this. You don't do it yourself when you have that much money, because the way to get your savings back is to have someone else do it. So if you make $48,000 a year and you live in Minnesota, then you probably don't, and two kids and a husband versus wife, a spouse, you're not thinking, let me put some money towards several accountants to put all this together so I can save $1,000, $1,500.
Yeah.
It's less accessible, the bottom line.
Well, and there's more to it. So I want to turn to a slightly different angle on this. If you have found out about Trump's proposed tax plan and the details that were given by Stephen Mnuchin, you might think that the tax cuts that are going to be given to the richest Americans are the biggest way that you're going to be screwed. And they are certainly a big way, but it turns out that there's other ways that you might be screwed in a way that could theoretically hurt progressives for literally decades going forward. And so I want to break down some of those. And as I'm reading this, bear in mind that in other videos I've compared the Trump tax plan to the Bush tax plan, and you might think, oh, it's just because it benefits the wealthiest individuals. No. In almost every way, it will look a lot like the Bush tax plan, including that it slashes corporate tax rates by nearly 60%, from 35% to 15%, taking $2.6 trillion out of the federal coffers over the next 10 years. Now, right now, only 1 out of every $9 of federal revenue comes from corporate taxes, compared to 65 years ago, it was 1 out of every $3. We've talked about that in videos before. That 1 out of 9 is now, and we're about to cut corporate taxes by 60%. You were just saying a minute ago that we are supposed to have the highest tax rate, but in effect, it's the lowest. Well, let's bring those down to matching each other. They actually will be perhaps the lowest. Now, in addition to that, Trump would cut the tax rate on those on offshore profits, coming back from 35% to just 10% on cash, and only 4% on non-cash. I'm not good at math, but that's something like a 90% tax cut. In addition, for hedge fund owners, the people who own what are called pass-through entities, he's going to cut their taxes by 2/3 to just 15%. Oh, and he's also, of course, going to eliminate the federal estate tax.
Okay, so let's stop right there. In a previous story, we talked about how Trump convinced Carrier, which is a heating and air conditioning company, to keep maybe as much as 1,000 jobs here in the United States instead of sending those jobs to Mexico. One way that he convinced them is through subsidizing financial benefits, basically using taxpayer money and giving them a financial incentive to stay here in the United States. So that's part of his economic policy, right? Here's how you convince these corporations to stay here, to keep jobs here. You give them taxpayer money. So how do you have enough taxpayer money in your revenue in order to pay all of these corporations money to convince them to stay here in the United States? So you're cutting tax revenue significantly, right?
60%.
Among the wealthiest people in the country who already don't pay their fair share of taxes. And then you turn around, you also say that you are going to pay these corporations taxpayer money in the form of subsidies, financial incentives to keep jobs here.
Yep.
It makes no sense for anyone who has...
If you own Carrier, it makes good sense.
Of course. But as Jake loves to say, if you are someone who has at least 2 brain cells to rub together, you can tell this doesn't make any sense, right?
Yeah.
So, I don't know.
That is the case.
That's what's going to happen.
I mean, look, the problem that we've had for a long time in America, and the reason that we have outsourcing is, for a lot of companies, it is simply cheaper to set up companies or factories in other countries where they have a lower standard of living. And you don't have to pay them as much, and they don't have unions for the most part, and the taxes might be theoretically lower. But we always figured we need to find a way to get them to stay here despite the fact that American workers have it better. He's found an alternative solution. Simply fuck over the American workers. And in fact, cut out their minimum wage, cut down the corporate taxes, make America a third world country again, and then the companies don't have to go anywhere. It's just as cheap to pay almost nothing to your workers here in America.
Hey,
Now,
but they're employed, right?
They're employed. The overall problem, and what I alluded to in the intro, was that the most recent version of his tax plan is estimated to cost us about $10 trillion over 10 years. Now, that money is going to have to come from somewhere. After all, it is spent on a variety of things. Now, you could make up for a lot of that by cutting the military. I don't think they're going to do that. And now I want you to think about how we're going to pay that off over the next 10 years. I mean, do you remember the debates that we had over, like, food stamps and how they're going to cut $20 billion in food stamps? We had this big fight, the huge effect that that's going to have on millions of Americans. That is a drop in the bucket of how much money we're about to lose. Now imagine how many food stamp-sized progressive priorities you need to cut to make up for $10 trillion over 10 years. And so by cutting these taxes, he is going to be able to do what George W. Bush so wisely did from a conservative point of view. By simply eliminating the money, you then eliminate the programs. And we know from hard experience, it's damn near impossible to stop additional tax cuts from happening. It is basically impossible to ever raise taxes again in America. And so when Trump cuts them, those progressive priorities are gone. Poof, gone. For decades and decades and decades, you will not see those again. Whether it's food stamps or the environment, perhaps workers' rights and protections, consumer financial protection, all those programs are going to be cut now. And this is the shit that I was saying all year, that if you fuck around and let Donald Trump become president, that is going to hurt you, death by a million cuts that you don't even see coming, and there's no healing coming for literally decades if it ever comes. And we are now seeing that plan being put into effect.
I know, John, but look, I know you've been saying all this stuff all year long, but what you fail to remember so quickly is emails.
That's true.
Emails.
I did forget that.
So let's all talk about emails.
Thank you for reminding me.
But no, this is, I don't know, as I've mentioned on the show before, and this is a risky statement to make because a lot of people are going to get hurt as a result of this administration and as a result of his so-called economic policies. But it could be a teachable moment for our electorate. It could be a moment where we finally stop attacking the powerless in the country and we advocate or we become advocates for ourselves. We educate ourselves through the unlimited resources that we have on the internet and become educated voters, right?
Yeah.
And not just believe anything anyone tells us. Believe the simple talk that some, businessman who's gone bankrupt 6 times tries to peddle us. We need to be smarter voters, right? And that's not to say, oh, you have to vote for Democrats. I want you to vote based on your best interest, but I want you to do it in an educated way.
Yeah.
That's all I'm hoping comes out of this. Even if things become destructive, even if the economy tanks again, please, in the future, don't believe shit that you read on Facebook, okay? Just make sure you're an informed voter and don't believe the hype. We'll see what happens. I don't know. I'm trying to look at the silver lining of all this.
I'm largely at that.
You have to eliminate fear and hate. Start thinking about actual things. Because fear and hate clouds judgment, it clouds when you think about things, you go, yeah, all that makes sense, but I'm mad, and I'm afraid of that person.
Yeah, if you
I'm
think
afraid
that
of those poor people who rely on food stamps.
Yes.
Fuck those kids, right? They're the real problem.
We are made to be overwhelmed by emotion, especially the negative emotions. If there's a tiger in the bush, I don't care about tax rates. I care about the tiger. And if there's a black or Hispanic person in the bush, I'm equally not concerned with tax rates. They're scary and they're out there. And we have not seen that. That's not the only explanation for why Trump won, but it is an explanation, and it's an extremely hard one to actually fix. We're actually seeing it play out all over Europe right now as well. Anyway, we're going to take our first break. We're going to come back and try to find some more silver linings, as Anna quite courageously tried to do there. We will come back with more, including tweets from you. You should be tweeting us at #2x2live, and we'll read some when we come back from this break.
Look, there is a moment. There could be a moment. There could be a moment where you go, that's it. We made it. It's over. I've been dreaming of the it's over party for a decade. Like when I go, okay, we're financially stable. It doesn't mean we don't have to be rich. We don't have to be, but like, I mean, for the young Turks, right? We dock the fucking ship. I want to dock the ship so badly.
Let me tell you the moment you'll know when you dock the ship is when you guys can pay me.
Look, man, the good news is we have viewers galore. We don't have money. I don't know why that's there. So that's a long conversation. On our way out, I will now ironically give you my major announcement of the day. TYT Network just now past 5 billion.
Now, top.
Welcome back to the first hour of the Young Turks with me, John Adrola, and Anna Kasparian, who I believe has some of your tweets.
Yes, I love your tweets, but before I read them, I just want to give a shout out to my mom who's watching right now, and she sends me cute text messages during the show, and she's like, "Hi, Balas." Balas is like a sweet word you say in Armenian. Great show, waiting for that silver lighting. She wrote lighting. She's the best. I love you, Mom. With lots of heart emojis. Alright, so TYT Lives. My favorite tweet is from Christina Oakes, and she says, "John is looking more and more Italian with his hair growing out." With like those heart-faced emojis, several of them.
Okay, because barring the heart-faced emojis, that's not necessarily a compliment.
There's good-looking
He's looking
Italian guys.
so Italian.
No, come on.
Well, thank you, Christina Oakes. I appreciate it.
Also, Tom Zawacki has a great tweet, and I wanted to bring this up, but I forgot. So don't forget to mention that in most tax filings, United Technology only paid 9.8% actual tax rate.
Well, yeah, I mean, they all paid so much less than the actual taxes. I mean, what's the rate they're gonna pay off of 15%? 1%?
Yeah, it's insane.
I need to become a corporation. They're people, my friends.
And then Smegman says, "So we're paying companies to employ Americans. Why don't we just give the money straight to the workers?" Which is exactly what you said. Which is,
when you hand money to a corporation to give a percentage of it to a worker, at some rate, that's just really inefficient socialism.
no, but I mean, think about this for a second. It's welfare, but it's welfare that the American people are going to go ahead and accept because the money goes to the most powerful, wealthy people in the country. But if taxpayer money goes toward the neediest people, including mothers who might have been forced to carry a pregnancy to term by right-wingers in their red state, you want to feed your kid. You had sex. You need to be punished. Okay? You and your kid. You guys need to
Sometimes during. Anyway, very good tweets, thank you. Okay, much to get to. I'm going to update you on the state of the Secretary of State thing. Mitt Romney is apparently still very much in the running to potentially become Donald Trump's Secretary of State, despite the Kellyanne Conway fiasco that went on. And we're going to talk about this because it's an incredibly important role, and it does actually say something about how America will interface with the rest of the world. Now, Mitt Romney just had a very delightful, luxurious dinner with Trump last night, and you're seeing him there looking like the most uncomfortable person in the world. The only explanation for that picture is that Donald Trump is stroking Mitt Romney right now.
No, Donald Trump.
The only explanation for both faces.
I think everyone can agree, regardless of your ideological, views. Donald Trump looks like Satan in that picture.
He looks like pedophile Satan. Yes.
He looks like he's gonna attack you, like from the photo. He's gonna jump out and get you.
Now, I do criticize people who focus too much on what politicians eat, but I do want to read one graphic about it because I have a point to make. The three men, this includes Priebus, ordered a young garlic soup with thyme and sautéed frog legs, and diver scallops with caramelized cauliflower and caper raisin emulsion as appetizers. And the reason they did that is because liberals are elitist and Donald Trump understands the concerns of the common working man.
Absolutely.
You morons across America. Ah! It's on a golden throne. We're elitists and don't understand the regular working people. But anyway, they had that meeting, and apparently it was very productive. Now, Mitt Romney has long been a supporter of Donald Trump, and so he came out from the meeting with a lot of good things to say about the man.
And let me put it very plainly. Enlightening and interesting and engaging. I enjoyed it very, very much. I was also very impressed by the remarks he made on his victory night. And let me put it very plainly. If we Republicans choose Donald Trump as our nominee, the prospects for a safe and prosperous future are greatly diminished. If Donald Trump's plans were ever implemented, the country would sink into prolonged recession. But you say, wait. Isn't he a huge business success? Doesn't he know what he's talking about? No, he isn't. And no, he doesn't. He inherited his business. He didn't create it. And whatever happened to Trump Airlines? How about Trump University? And then there's Trump Magazine, and Trump Vodka, and Trump Steaks, and Trump Mortgage. A business genius he is not. Trump tells us that he is very, very smart. I'm afraid that when it comes to foreign policy, he is very, very not smart. Here's what I know. Donald Trump is a phony, a fraud. His promises are as worthless as a degree from Trump University. He's playing the members of the American public for suckers. He gets a free ride to the White House, and all we get is a lousy hat. I'm convinced America has greatness ahead. And this is a time for choosing. God bless us to choose a nominee who will make that vision a reality.
Oops. Oh, that was from earlier in the campaign. I apologize. We're going to have his actual comments, but feel free to jump in.
Yeah, that was a great moment.
For Mitt Romney.
Not even for Mitt Romney. Actually, I don't even know why I said it was a great moment. It wasn't. I was trying to think of something to say as I was stalling to gather my thoughts.
Oh, okay. Sorry.
So, but now I'll actually tell you what I think. I just find this whole situation interesting, right? Because Romney, as you saw in that video, was so brutal toward Donald Trump and so critical of him and even called him dumb without using the word dumb. And then Trump attacked him, and I also attacked Romney because he lost in 2012. It was clear as day that he would get attacked for losing in 2012 and being a loser by someone like Donald Trump. And so I thought that it was actually not well played by Romney, and that video is now coming back to haunt him as he's being possibly chosen as Trump's Secretary of State. It's amazing. It's all amazing to me.
I thought it was actually a great moment because when he gave that speech, he was supporting a different candidate, and Trump was doing quite well in the Republican primary at that point. And Mitt Romney was, it seemed at the time, doing what Kasich was doing and George W. Bush was doing. I mean, these are people who are reprehensible in a number of ways, but they have a limit. At some point, you simply cannot support the nominee. And it seemed like he was principled in that same way. And after all, don't forget, in that video, he specifically said he doesn't know what he's doing in terms of foreign policy. If you become Secretary of State, you're going to have to, yes, you will be able to advise or whatever, and we know he'll listen to his advisors, but you have to put into effect his foreign policy. You are aligning yourself with a person who you just said is not smart. No, and I want to read a couple of comments.
Okay. Please let me make one really quick point. It's just the part of all of this that also really amazes me is the fact that Donald Trump stood out as someone who is very different for rural Americans, right? He's the person who's saying he's going to drain the swamp. He's the person who's not going to play politics as usual. And usually what happens in politics is, politicians will attack one another very viciously, even amongst themselves in the same political party. And then once someone wins, all of a sudden, we're best friends, we're going to work together, party unity, right? Like they're all about that. And Donald Trump was not supposed to be that guy. And look at who he's filling his cabinet with. He's filling his cabinet with people that his supporters, his voters despised, didn't like, mocked. People like Romney, right? And so Donald Trump is the antithesis of a principled human being. And so is Romney. But with Romney, it was to be expected because he is a standard politician.
Yeah.
And right now, Trump is showing us that he is well on his way to also be a standard politician.
Exactly. I want to read a couple of the other statements that Romney put out because I thought that Romney represented, like, it's very, there's nothing easier in the universe than to say, if you don't like the nominees, that there's no difference between the nominees. But there was clearly a difference. It was ridiculous ever to say that there wasn't, and it seemed like Romney did understand it. He said this about 9 months ago. Today there is a contest between Trumpism and Republicanism. Though through the calculated statements of its leader, Trumpism has become associated with racism, misogyny, bigotry, xenophobia, vulgarity, and most recently, threats and violence. I am repulsed by each and every one of these. This is before grab him by the pussy. And he talked about that quite at length, and he kept saying, there is nothing Trump can do policy-wise to reassure me that he could be president, because he has shown clearly, repeatedly, with what he says and what he thinks and what he does, that he is not qualified. And so it doesn't matter what he said in that fancy dinner over frog legs and emulsions. He is still a horrible person, and you are willing to tie yourself to that person. Now, you could say maybe he hopes to, from the inside, enact positive change. Good luck with that. And look, Romney, I'm sure, seems more appealing than some of the other potential secretaries of state. But I would love, even if you're a fan of Romney, please explain to me how he is qualified to be Secretary of State.
I know
he was a governor of a state.
Yep.
He has no experience with foreign policy. He's simply a high-profile Republican. We need to stop treating the American government, the most important cabinet positions, as if they are simply Christmas stocking stuffers to be handed out to people that you like, or if you want to show that you're appealing to the other side.
I don't know, Trump. I just feel like inexperienced former politicians are people, my friend.
Perhaps they are. Oh, God. There's more bad stuff about the KKK, and he's playing the American public for suckers. He really liked that lousy hat line. He used that a couple times. Watch him wear the hat soon. That is going to be a pathetic day. Oh, yeah. Why don't we actually play that? That's a good point. So we've jokingly alluded to what he said. Here is what he actually said after the meeting.
Enlightening and interesting and engaging. I enjoyed it very, very much. I was also very impressed by the remarks he made on his victory night. By the way, it's not easy winning. I know that myself. He did something I tried to do and was unsuccessful in accomplishing. He won the general election. And he continues with a message of inclusion and bringing people together. I have to tell you, I've been impressed by what I've seen in the transition effort. The people he selected as members of his cabinet are solid, effective, capable people. I happen to think that America's best days are ahead of us. I think you're going to see America continue to lead the world in this century. All of those things combined give me increasing hope that President Trump is the very man who can lead us to that better future.
Oh my God.
Those are lies. Those are lies. And he knows that election night thing was just a short little stunt. And then after saying it's bigotry, it's xenophobia, it's racism, sexism, you're reassured by his cabinet picks. Like Steve Bannon doesn't confirm to you what you were so scared of. And you're hearing good things out of the transition. There hasn't been one piece of good news out of the transition. He is simply lying.
Man, tucking tail is one of the most difficult and potentially embarrassing things that any individual can do. But tucking tail for someone that you were actually right about in the beginning must be much worse.
You're a rich man. Just go be a rich man.
Yes!
The rest of your life. Go be rich. Set up a foundation or whatever. Apparently you can do whatever you want with them these days.
You don't have to lie to people about shopping at Costco anymore. Just go enjoy your wealth.
You don't need to be Secretary of State. It's not that great. Maybe he wants to run again.
Think of it this way. When he first sat down, after all the past that we're talking about during the campaign, and other things people said, I mean, Rubio had to get this drilling. Cruz had to get this drilling about what do you think about now since you're supporting him? What about the things you said before? They all have to answer that.
Yeah.
So when you first sit down, there's no cameras and audio, does he go, okay, so all that stuff I said about you before, do you go, I'm sorry? When Trump says this guy was a loser, you know he couldn't win, he choked, remember that choke line?
Insulting him.
So when you go and sit down, do you go, hey, good job, how you doing? Hey, let's do something. Or do you go, yeah, all that was fun and games. Where's the reality of their brains? Is this while he was doing that speech where he cut up Trump? Was he lying then, or was he going, I'm just doing this for fun now, or is he doing it for fun now? Which one is the reality of their true feelings? No one knows. And we hold, and no one cares, by the way, to a degree. Yeah. And some of the reporter will ask him, so what about what you said before? And they'll go, yeah, that was that. And no one goes, that's ridiculous. Kevin Durant in the NBA, how about this comparison? The Thunder got beat by the Warriors last year in the playoffs. Bitter defeat. Mm-hmm. And he left that team, went in free agency, and signed with the team that beat him. It was the biggest story of the NBA about, what this loser? How could you play with the guys who beat you? You're pathetic. We don't care in politics when it really changes our lives. When it comes to a basketball game, people give a shit.
What if
we don't care if you go and go with the guy that you hated before.
What if the other team said that your wife was ugly and that your father killed JFK?
Oh my God!
Oh man, we don't care. Look,
we give them passes.
We have never been offered millions and millions of dollars. Perhaps that eases a lot of these feelings.
Speak for yourself. Well, neither of us.
I don't know. Okay, let's jump to something a little bit closer to home for you, perhaps. A conservative group has launched an effort to list and target professors that they disagree with, liberal professors generally. Now, they're either doing this in an attempt to silence them through intimidation or to potentially get them fired eventually by bringing negative press to them and the university that has hired them, or perhaps they're just trying to sell some merchandise. We're going to try to break down this video. The website accuses nearly 200 college professors of advancing leftist propaganda in the classroom and discriminating against conservative students. This is a quote from Professor Watchlist, the organizer. That's the website. We aim to post professors who have records of targeting students for their viewpoints, forcing students to adopt a certain perspective, and or abuse or harm students in any way for standing up for their beliefs. Now, if that was actually the case, we would be perfectly fine with this. And they say that while we have a way that students can tip us to professors that we should be watching, we only include people on the watch list if the news has covered what they've done. But they fucked up because I, thanks to you, ran TYT University, and so I came across a bunch of these conservative watchdog organizations that have BS sites that purport to be run by students, but are not. They're set up by extremely old white Republicans, and then they will just simply say, oh, someone said this guy was talking about Marx in a way I didn't like, and they'll write up a little article about it. And now it's in the news.
Yes.
And so you can put them on Professor Watch List, and you can try to have the students' parents put pressure on them to potentially be fired or to shut up. And we have a little bit more. What I think is most interesting is in that quote I just read you. It says, we want to post professors who have records of targeting students for their viewpoints, as you put people on a watch list for their viewpoints.
It's actually incredible, because another thing that they do is they attack specific students who call for safe spaces. So they have certain, activities that they encourage conservative students on campus to do. So, for instance, have things like, an affirmative action. Bake sale, yes. And another thing, if students are interested in a safe space and it's become an issue that's been brought up on campus, they will host a safe space event where they will then mock the students who show up. And they'll mock them by doing all sorts of things, like
set up a table with crayons, juice boxes, stuffed animals, and coloring books to show that safe spaces are for children.
Yeah.
And you demonstrate that by acting like a child.
So let me tell you what I think about all of this, because the reality is I don't agree with safe spaces on college campuses. I think that safe spaces actually undermine the entire purpose of being on a college campus. The only times that I really learned anything valuable in college, I'm going to keep it real, is when my preconceived notions were challenged. And those are the most uncomfortable moments in life, because it requires you to reflect on what you previously believed, look through evidence if you are a smart person and you actually want to become smarter, and then concede defeat if that's what happened. Admit that you were wrong, and that's a humbling experience, but it's also an important experience in order to grow. We have to be confronted with ideas that are different from our own, ideas that make us uncomfortable. And so I haven't been very supportive of ultra liberal or progressive students who call for safe spaces, but interestingly enough, now you have conservative students who are calling for safe spaces against professors who want to talk about discrimination, who want to talk about inequality, who want to talk about issues that make them uncomfortable. You want to know what I think is an actual problem on college campuses? Having lobbyists like the Koch brothers fund science programs which push the notion that climate change does not exist so their coal industry can continue to be profitable. I think that's more destructive than some bullshit about how Chicano studies professor is making you uncomfortable, right? Like, okay, I got it. You don't like minorities. I got it. You want to be a hateful little shit. Then get the fuck off the college campus, okay? Get the fuck off the college campus.
This is not a safe space for you.
It is not a safe space for you, whether you are calling for, liberal safe spaces or for these conservative safe spaces. It's a college campus. Academic freedom is so incredibly important, okay? And so I don't want people to be banned from speaking at college campuses. There's a little bit of disagreement in our network about that. But even if I find that person to be disgusting or deplorable, whether it's a former politician who had very questionable foreign policy and pushed for questionable foreign policy, or even someone who might just be a professional troll and for some reason gets called on college campuses to speak, I think they should be allowed to speak. Freedom of information, in my opinion, is way more important than people's hurt feelings.
Yeah, I'm very glad that you rightly point out that what they want is for classrooms to be a safe space, a space where you're safe from having evidence presented to you when you don't agree with it.
Right.
They want to be able to raise their hand and say something crazy, and the person who has studied for a lifetime on this material is not supposed to correct them if they're wrong or present contrary evidence so that people can make up their own mind. They don't want that going on. Which is, of course, important. I don't generally, when we say we're for or against safe spaces, I think that in practice that doesn't mean anything. Because safe spaces does not mean one thing. It's a term that's used by literally thousands of different people. There's no governing body which is saying this is what a safe space is. A safe space could be that a black student union is set up and they don't want white supremacists going in there and just distributing pamphlets or something like that. Or it could be a classroom where you're not allowed to talk about something controversial. It means such a broad range of different things that the concept is interesting, but I don't think it means one thing. And I will say, in terms of like the banning speakers is one thing. But when you say a school should have to pay an exorbitant amount of money to a controversial speaker, and if they don't want to do that, that's them being banned. That's not the same thing, of course. If that was the case, I could simply say, okay, pay me $1 million. Oh, you won't? I'm being banned. This is censorship. There's no reason why a university should have to pay $100,000 to some little shit to come in to speak for an hour. Now, if they want to come for free or for a reasonable amount of money, and if you block them then yes, that is banning them or censorship or whatever.
That I completely agree with. And the one final thing I want to say is no ideology, no political ideology gets to have a monopoly on education.
Yeah.
So just because you are a liberal student or just because you are a conservative student doesn't mean that you get to call the shots. Doesn't mean that everything that gets talked about in that campus has to reinforce what you believe and what makes you comfortable, okay? Education is supposed to be available, attainable, accessible for everyone, regardless of what their ideological standpoints are.
Yeah.
So I am completely against what's happening on college campuses right now. We need to promote dialogue so we don't continue dividing the country further. That's part.
Because it was going to definitely play into what you were just saying about the wake-up call that many conservative students might have once they go to university and realize that their worldview isn't necessarily supported by the facts. But I will constrain it in advance of your mission that you just put out there. Okay, super quick story to finish out the hour. Tragedy going on in America. The wildfires that have devastated Gatlinburg, Tennessee have continued over the past few days and have become increasingly deadly over time. More than 14,000 residents and tourists were forced to evacuate so far, and it continues, and the fire has spanned more than 15,000 acres currently. A total of 7 people have tragically died so far. It's possible that more are out there and have not yet been discovered. And more than 400 structures have been destroyed. That's a massive leap from just yesterday. And again, it continues. The names of those who have died have not yet been released, and when you combine that with the huge number of people who have been evacuated and aren't necessarily able to get into contact with their families, that is an absolutely horrifying situation to face. If you know people who might have been in that area, hopefully they will release the names soon to put to ease people who are worried about their family members and friends. And so wildfires have burned in parts of the southeast for weeks, not just in this area, fueled by the region's worst drought in nearly a decade. Now, at some point, perhaps we can speculate why the Southeast might be having one of its worst droughts in decades. I have a few theories that perhaps we can come back to at some point. There is a little bit of potential good news coming. The area could be helped by up to 2 inches of rain that are expected from today until tomorrow. But stormy weather could also produce lightning strikes and winds that could help fire to spread. And so there's some good news, some bad news there. Now, investigators are currently looking into this. They say that the trail fire was human-caused, but haven't yet given any evidence to back that up. But supposedly this now deadly fire, 7 people have died, was caused by a human. You're seeing there some footage from inside of a cafe, I believe. It looks like the mouth of hell outside of it.
Wow.
And there's a massive bonfire, and they are trying to stay safe. For all we know, they might at that point have been surrounded. We have some more. That will fire, or that will show, and they have been getting worse year by year.
So whether it was caused by a human or if this was just a result of the environment's brush fire,
or both,
the reality is that we are dealing with extreme weather conditions throughout the country, and so this part of Tennessee is dealing with a drought, and obviously we're dealing with drought here in California as well, Southern California to be specific. And so that exacerbates wildfires and things like that. And so, look, we're going to see more and more of this. And the question is, modified some of our food so it could withstand the climate change that we have created as humans. And so, again, get ready to see more and more of this unless we're willing to get serious about climate change.
Which is almost certainly not going to come for at least 4 years.
That's right.
And a lot of damage can be done in the meantime. Man, that video of them driving with a fire along the roadside, that was horrifying. And in a lot of cases, again, it can be on both sides of a road. Now, some people have been rescued. The search continues. We will continue to keep you appraised of the situation in Gatlinburg. That is going to be it for the first hour. We're going to take a little break. When we come back, Anna Kasparian is going to be taking the reins with another hour of news, both serious and fun. As we go to break, can you get ready to play video 9? This is a tragedy. 7 people have died. More almost certainly will die before this is over. 400 structures destroyed, countless property damage, and people's lives being destroyed. As I said, some have been rescued. We have video of one of the rescues, which doesn't take away from any of the tragedy, but I am looking for the silver linings that you've been talking about. So we're going to take a break, and let's play video 9 as we go to that break.
Oh, I didn't expect that.
Can you tell what it is?
Is it a little brown bear?
Yeah.
That's gonna make me fucking cry.
They had rescued it from the woods.
It just wants to hold on.
The woods were on fire, so it came out. You should have told them what it was. Nobody knows what it is.
I thought it was pretty clear. It's been rescued. I said they've rescued some people.
I got very urgent in rolling out a bank exit program that we've been workshopping with a couple activists. And so we reached out to Susan Sarandon, to Bobby Kennedy, to Mark Ruffalo, to Bill McKibben from 350, and a number of other amazing activists. And Susan let us know that she was indeed already planning to take her money out of Chase. And, we were able to put together a campaign in less than 24 hours called #BankExit, which asks you to not invest in Dakota Access Pipeline by having your money in the big banks: Bank of America, Wells Fargo, HSBC, Citibank, Chase. So what we're asking people to do is to not invest, because if you have your money in those banks, you are invested in the Dakota Access Pipeline. They are huge stakeholders in Energy Transfer Partners and in the pipeline itself. Go into your bank, withdraw your money, tell them why. Tell them you will not keep your money in the bank so long as they're investing in the fossil fuel industry and investing in the Dakota Access Pipeline. Then film yourself doing that. Call out a few of your friends by name. Challenge them to do the same thing. And post it to social media under the #BankExit. After that, there are some places you can put your money. You can put it in a federal credit union that are not investing in the fossil fuel industry. It's a good thing to do anyways. I also believe City National, Amalgamated Bank, Charter, there are some banks, if you do the research, there are some banks that are not invested in fossil fuels. So we're asking you to stand with the people of Standing Rock. It's great that you're posting on social media. It's great that you're showing up, but vote with your dollars. Put your money where your mouth is. Because if you have your money in those banks, you are investing in the pipeline and you are contributing to it. Right now, our citizens, American citizens, are getting shot in the face with rubber bullets. Women and children going to protect their own water, their only water source. They're coming to the DAPL with love and prayers and nonviolent protests. They've sick dogs on them. They're throwing them in kennels. This is 2016 in America, and I urge you to stand with them. It's not just these people. This is the convergence of all movements, because truly it is going to require not just a few of us on our keyboards, but all of us showing up. So this is the coming together of all peoples, of all movements, making a stand for the future. And it's going to require no less than our best effort. Again, I want to thank the good people at Young Turks. I want to thank all the progressives out there. Your voices are being heard. And I want to thank Bernie Sanders for igniting an entire generation of kids that got woke. And it's still going. The political revolution lives on. So remember, #BankExit, and go to Standing Rock. I promise you, you won't regret it. It's one of the most incredible things I've ever done in my life. So thank you to Young Turks. Thank you to all of you. Thank all of you that are standing for the future.
Welcome to your Friday postgame. Except it's currently midday on Thursday.
Are you going to fire me?
Sometimes I'm being a dick. Back in 05, we almost went under, but members rescued us.
Once their only method of success is going the athletic route, it tends to be the more preferred way to treat your body.
Nothing good in the world is ever happening. Strong arm that only wants to spice like fun. It's totally bullshit.
Don't do drugs and don't shoot people.
CYT is all in a good mood today. I know I'm a weirdo if I read books, but fuck people. I have a stack of papers here. Believe it or not, this is how Jack used to be when he did the radio show. Wait till you see these huge things.
I'm going to go with your triceps. Size, very impressive. The quads.
That's for the members. That's for the post games together. We're too strong.
me.
That was rough.
All right, so I did not vet these, but I'm going to go ahead and read them anyway. Brandon Atkin tweets to us using the hashtag TYT Live. Trump looks like he's grabbing Romney by the pussy. Hashtag he doesn't even wait.
Can you imagine what Trump said to him? Trump is such a child. He must have just bitched him out so much. Oh, Romney, you little bitch. You little bitch.
Yeah.
Be a man. Be a human. You're rich. You don't need to take this.
You don't. And that's like the great part about being rich, right? You don't need to take anyone's crap.
Just
but for some
build
reason,
a crystal and gold tower for yourself somewhere.
So I think it's crazy when people even mention or suggest this, but every once in a while someone will be like, "Oh, you should run for office or whatever," right? And I'm like, "No, never." And it's because it would be a terrible, terrible life to live, right? Like it's just everyone's in your business. Everyone's always criticizing you. You can never
it's like
win.
Being on YouTube.
It's being principled is like a liability. Like, yeah, it's true. It is like
also like on YouTube.
But it's 100 times worse when you're trying to be a politician in the national spotlight. Like I think it takes a certain kind of narcissist and egomaniac to want to do that.
People are really wrong with you. Probably think you're looking to represent and help people.
Mm-hmm.
People that are good at it aren't going to help people. They're going to control people.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, this is what I want to do, to make people be the way I want things to be. Not, I'm going to go in and make things better and listen to what people have to tell me. They think they know everything. And if they don't think that, they think, it doesn't matter, I want to control everyone.
Mm-hmm.
If you don't have that mindset, you probably don't want to do it because that's what it has become.
Yeah. Mm. All right. Oh yeah, I got to promote some stuff. Okay, so tonight I will be doing a TYT interview with Josh Fox. A lot of you are familiar with him. He is the director of Gasland, and he actually just returned to Los Angeles from the Dakota Access Pipeline. He's been on the front lines with the protesters, and he is going to share his unique and important perspective. So make sure you check that out at 9:15 p.m. Eastern, 6:15 p.m. Pacific. Members can watch my interview, the full thing. Live. It's going to be streaming for members. And then also right afterwards at 7:15 p.m. Pacific time, smart, talented, and most of all, extraordinarily handsome Malcolm Fleschner will be interviewing former Marine and Baltimore police officer Michael Wood Jr. And he's been interviewed on TYT before, and he's a great interview, so make sure you check that out as well.
Guess who wrote that copy?
All right, guys. Let's do some stories, shall we?
I like stories.
Right. Leading up to the general election, gun sales increased significantly in the United States because many were worried that if Hillary Clinton won, then she would pass very, very strict gun legislation and hinder Americans' abilities to buy guns that they perhaps shouldn't be able to buy. But nonetheless, Trump did get elected, and interestingly enough, even though gun sales have gone down a little bit, gun sales have gone up among a very specific group of people, minorities. And these are individuals who are very much concerned for their safety during the Trump administration. Now, NBC reported on this and gave us some facts and figures, so I want to share them with you. Apparently, gun store owners told NBC News that since November 8th, they're seeing up to 4 times as many black and minority customers, and black gun groups are reporting double the normal number of attendees at their meetings since the election. Now, let me give you some specific examples. In 2014, 54% of blacks surveyed by Pew Research said gun ownership does more to protect people from crime than put people's safety at risk, versus 29% who said that in 2012, almost double. United States right now, and it's been amplified by the fact that the Southern Poverty Law Center has reported that, hundreds, I think at this point around 900 hate crimes have been, or complaints have been reported to the organization. And so we've seen stories of people flipping out at African American baristas at Coffee Beans or at Starbucks. We've seen cases of swastikas incorrectly spray painted on various pieces of private property. And, hijabs or headscarves have been ripped off of people's heads. So we're seeing all sorts of these cases, and of course, minorities are afraid, and so now they are arming themselves to protect themselves if something happens.
Yeah, which I understand, but isn't
100%.
necessarily the solution. And also, I mean, the stats about between 2012 and 2014, the fears of saying basically the guns they protect you rather than putting your life more at risk. That those numbers would rise so much at that point. That's before Trump, by the way. At the same time, violent crime is going down, and so I believe it's fair to say, demonstrably untrue that you don't need guns as much. Now, yes, there are more hate crimes now, and God knows that might become a constant under Donald Trump, but I don't think that people should have the level of fear that they do. People in America are so primed to be scared of everyone around them. Now, right now, I can totally understand, especially if you're a minority, that you would be scared, because we're seeing the Sig Heils being yelled out and the swastikas and all that. I mean, generally, for most of these cases, like the person who yelled at the barista, I'm glad the barista didn't have a gun. There didn't need to be a shooting there.
Right.
I'm worried that in their attempts to defend themselves, even rightfully so, like they are scared and they should be, in that case, they're not going to be given the benefit of the doubt. They shoot someone. Stand your ground rarely applies if you're non-white. Now, you might need to do something to protect your life, but if you do, you are not going to be treated the same as a white person who packs a gun and just ends up shooting somebody.
I get it, and it strikes close to home for me personally because I want to get a gun. And so, look, I'm keeping it real. I'm going to, and I know Jank disagrees with it, and other people here at TYT disagree with it. I don't care.
I don't want a gun around Charlie.
I don't want a gun around Charlie either, and it sucks that it's gotten to this point. But 2016, for the first time ever in my life, made me realize that there are people out there who genuinely want to hurt you, and they want to attack you. They want to hurt you and attack you simply because you have a point of view or perspective that differs from their own perspective.
And because you're a woman while having that perspective.
That's also part of it, right? And so, yesterday, for instance, I was on Instagram, and some crazy white, I don't even know how I came across this guy's page. Sometimes, when I smoke weed, I like to go through the Discover page on Instagram because it's interesting. You just see like random pictures and random memes that might be entertaining or funny or thought-provoking. And I came across this white supremacist page where he was just posting pictures of lynchings. And I guess he hadn't been reported yet, and I reported him immediately. And I don't know if he got taken down. I haven't checked. I got a note back saying that specific photo that I reported got taken down. But we're living in this day and age where people are not just being attacked on the internet anymore. People are being physically attacked in person, and they're afraid. And I get it. And so I just want everyone to take a step back, reflect on what's happening, and before you make a decision to get a weapon, which of course I just disclosed to you guys that I made the decision to do that myself.
You have an attack dog.
Right. Just make sure that you're properly trained with it, which, by the way, at this point I'm not. I'm going to start training with Wes, actually.
Really?
Yeah.
That could be fun. We should do a video.
And be safe. Like, I'm a responsible person, and also, I hate shooting guns. I've been to gun ranges, and every single time I despise it. It doesn't make me
actually enjoy it.
I don't enjoy it. I don't feel powerful, and I actually feel terrible that it's gotten to this point, right, where I feel like I need to do something that I actually don't like to do just to feel protected and safe. But this is the world we live in now, so I get it. I don't begrudge them at all. I just hope that they're safe and that they're even-tempered and they don't, prematurely use their weapon.
Well, kind of what this shows is, I guess, mission accomplished in a way when you stoke fear where it doesn't exist to the degree that it's been stoked in this country. Like I've always said before, there was this assumption that only conservatives or white folks own guns in the country, or that they are the only ones who buy into any of the fear that happens. So once fear strikes anyone, we're all Americans. We were all born in the same thought process of, hey, you're going to come for me, I got to come for you first. And we've proven that out in our legal proceedings, right? So no matter what background you are, people continue to forget. I don't care what race you are. You're like, oh, someone's coming to attack me. I need to be ready. And that's just the way we think. So I hope they're not surprised by this, by this influx. And now that would breed more. Oh, I don't know what
And now more people will buy guns after hearing this report.
In one circle, they'll be like, did you hear?
Everybody's getting guns. Yeah, that's
Because there
absolutely
was
right.
already the assumption that black folks carry all the guns, except they have them illegally. You know, those ghettos are packed full of guns, and they just shoot them in the air every night.
They're not packed full of AK-47s, I know that.
By the way,
just be careful. Be super
no,
careful.
of course. And again, if by the way, for anyone who's like, oh, I thought you were against guns, I've always been very clear that I've never been, maybe when I was really young, I was like, yeah, ban guns, but that wasn't an educated way of approaching the situation. I don't agree with a gun ban, but I do agree with the proper measures to ensure that the wrong people don't end up with guns, right? I know that it seems like it's impossible to turn back the hands of time and do something about the fact that we're swimming in guns and it's super easy to get access to them. But I'm going to go through a background check. I want to go through the proper legal measures to obtain a gun. That's the way that it should be, right? I feel like people like me, people like Jordan, who watches this show and who's an incredible, incredible person, should have the right to a gun because we're responsible human beings.
Certain guns, yes.
Certain guns. Well, I know. I'm not going to buy a freaking Kalashnikov or whatever it's called.
Nice job. Nice job. I will warn you, though, especially in Libby-Lib, California, that process of, like, registration paperwork takes a long time.
I know.
Do you know how long it took to register these two deadly weapons? Months. Okay, but it was worth it. Okay. And they never misfire. I hate myself.
I don't even know what to say. I just wanted to see your face. I don't know if you heard, but I did over 1,000.
Well, I mean, here's a problem I got. I'm not saying anything. I'm just saying, you come to my one-room apartment.
So let's move on now. We have other stories to
you
get
better
to
take
that
the
are
police
important.
job.
Okay. All right. While everyone was hyper-focused on Donald Trump's latest ridiculous tweets, turns out that the United States and the UK both went pretty far to spy on its own citizens. So let's start off with the US. Now, in the US, we have something known as Rule 41, which pertains specifically to things like surveillance, right? And so there will now be updates to this rule unless some members of Congress successfully fight back against it, which doesn't seem likely. Now, Rule 41 is also known as the Federal Rule of Criminal Procedure, and on Thursday, meaning tomorrow, December 1st, Rule 41 will go into effect in the U.S., giving the government vast and unprecedented powers to hack into the phones, computers, and other devices of Americans. Now, under the proposed changes to Rule 41, one warrant can be used on multiple computers, which privacy advocates say could affect tens of thousands of computers that are quietly infected, for instance, with botnets. Warrants can be issued to hack into computers in undisclosed locations or hidden by technological means, such as Tor browsers that mask a user's identity. So let me suss that out a little more for you guys. I've never used the word sus before, but I like it.
You just did so naturally.
I did. I'm like a pro. I'll look it up in the book. But anyway, so what traditionally has happened with local law enforcement is if they want to local judge and get a warrant, and basically they can only hack into or surveil that one specific piece of technology, and that's it. Under these changes, they're able to surveil every piece of technology with just one warrant. And they don't have to go to a local judge. Any judge can make a decision about any municipality throughout the country.
Seems like against the philosophy of how that whole thing is set up. But I mean, I'm sure that they still have to let people know that they're being surveilled, right?
Wrong again. The government, back in the day, or actually right now at this moment, must notify individuals who are involved in search and seizure. Now, the new wording says that the government must make a reasonable effort. Privacy advocates say that this leaves the door open for the government to start hacking into people's personal devices without their knowledge.
Like send them a message on MySpace. I tried. I didn't get it, oddly enough. Yeah. And so, look, this is scary, and it's happening under, and Trump isn't even president anymore. This is already going into effect, and there are some senators who are going to try to stop it, but as you say, how long can they possibly hold out for? And so I know some people, some big libs have been saying, well, look, this is why Obama should have done far more to stop these sorts of techniques, because if you hand over a surveillance state to Trump, then he's going to use it and expand it. And I get what they're saying. I think it largely misses the point because I never also see them explain how he could have stopped a Republican president with a Republican Senate and a Republican House and a conservative Supreme Court from setting it up themselves if they wanted to. But I get the point. It's a scary thing to have in existence. And I do not, Donald Trump is exactly the last person you would want having the ability to spy, perhaps personally, on any individual he wants. I guarantee he spends 8 hours a day of the first 100 days of his presidency looking for naked pictures of celebrities. And that is what we now have on tap for America, even before he becomes president, but he will inherit it.
So there are a lot of ramifications to something like this, especially if you are, let's say, a member of the media who is in opposition to Trump's administration, right? Look, I personally am not that worried about me because everything I do is out there. So I'm not really, I'm not concerned. So let's say Trump doesn't like what we're doing here at TYT and he decides to specifically go after me. All right, we'll go ahead and let the audience know what kind of porn I watch. I've already told them myself, right? So I'm not that concerned about that. But I am concerned because it will be used as a tool of intimidation toward those who try to hold anyone in power accountable. Yeah. I mean, this goes beyond Trump. Exactly. You see the type of brutality that the activists at DAPL are facing right now. You see the kind of brutality that Occupy Wall Street faced. And now, with increased surveillance, and in my opinion, these unconstitutional measures, which go against unreasonable searches and seizures, politicians and those in power will have more leverage against the American people should they choose to speak out against their wrongdoing. So I'm definitely concerned about that. And it's not contained to the United States. We're now seeing this also happen in the UK. So let's go to graphic 08. No, I'm sorry. Let's go to graphic 9. So the UK on Tuesday, just this past Tuesday, passed the Investigatory Powers Act, a controversial new law that formally legalizes a number of mass surveillance programs and which forces internet service providers to store browsing data on all customers for 12 months. Look, I know that the UK doesn't have to talk about how much we want to protect the Constitution. We talk about how much we care about, the First Amendment, although you have Donald Trump basically scolding the biggest names in news, calling them the Trump Towers and telling them, you can't report on me in a negative way, don't post pictures of my double chin, okay? And then also at the same time, we have people who vociferously protect the Second Amendment, okay, and they want to protect their guns. But, think about the fact that there are other amendments in our Constitution that we just allow the government to violate willy-nilly, right? And we do it out of fear. We do it because we allow them to fearmonger about the others and national security. And it doesn't matter how much we give. It doesn't matter how much we concede. It doesn't matter how much they can peek into or peer into our personal lives. They want more, and they keep telling us that we're less safe than ever. And so it's frustrating.
After decades of giving them what they want.
That's exactly right. Exactly right. So I don't know. I've given up on this issue. It's done. It's done. Our privacy rights are gone.
It's funny. That's actually, I'm going to say something like that. But yeah, look, I think you bring up that there are many amendments to the Constitution. I think that if those amendments wanted to be respected, they should have been included in the Second Amendment. And then perhaps people would have paid attention to them. We are effectively taking a couple steps more into an episode of Black Mirror. There's even an episode this season about them manipulating people into doing what they want because of the information they've gathered on them. You trust Steve Bannon and Donald Trump to not do that sort of thing? I wouldn't, personally. But I agree with you largely. This is the 532nd privacy-related story that we've done in the past 8 years, 12 years on the Young Turks. And I think that we have to be willing to admit at this point we've failed. We've talked about the limits on how much just speaking about something and covering it and persuasion can actually do. Americans don't care. And we can break down all the different reasons that they don't care, and some do, but clearly the vast majority of Americans are at least passively willing to give their privacy up because of fear of Muslims or whoever, insert whatever you want. They clearly don't care enough about this. And this is, again, another area where when you give up these rights, good luck getting those rights back again. the CIA and the NSA and the NRO and all that, all those organizations are not in the habit of giving up technological access once they're handed it.
Exactly right. That was a defeatist ending, but I agree with it. I agree with it, to be honest with you. I mean, we've been talking about privacy rights for how long? Poor Edward Snowden.
Poor guy.
Poor
He
Edward
tried.
Snowden. I mean, what did you do? You what a fruitless effort. It's true.
tried.
It's true, though. It's true, and I feel terrible for
That was our best opportunity to see how big the problem was. And it came enough after the height of the Iraq War that people should have been a little bit less scared of the international other. And yet still, most people, like Jer was talking to people in Britain and how they're largely like, yeah, we get watched all the time, we might not like it, but we sort of accept it. We do that too. We're just so used to it because half of the population will say, well, I never really do anything, what do I care? Not understanding that it does still affect them. And the other half will say, no, there's scary brown people and we need to hack into every computer in the world.
By the way, we all have embarrassing stuff, right? Like,
I do on my phone.
I mean,
among other
we
things.
all do. We all do. And it's just, I mean, anyway. Okay, so you don't care. You think that you're a perfect
Our
angel.
audience does. When we always I always feel bad when we say you, because clearly you are the exception of the rule by virtue of the fact that you can hear us right now. But the other yous who aren't currently watching, unfortunately, don't care enough.
I guess not. All right, some good news, though. So let's move on to that. And it's kind of political, but also... Anyway, let me just do the story. What's wrong with me? All right. The Food and Drug Administration has agreed to additional new trials for ecstasy, specifically MDMA, the active component in ecstasy, as relief for PTSD patients. Now, this is really great news because there have been studies in the past, and there's a growing body of evidence indicating that MDMA could have positive effects in helping those who are suffering from PTSD, and a condition that, in a lot of cases, can't be helped with other means of psychotherapy. Now, C.J. Harden is a former Afghanistan soldier. He actually did 3 tours in Iraq and Afghanistan, and he suffered from crippling PTSD. It was so bad that he actually wanted to be a hermit. Like, he left society, like, wanted to go live in the forest where he basically was for a very long time, and then finally he was so desperate that he tried MDMA, and it worked. He said, it allowed me to see my trauma without fear or hesitation and finally process things and move forward. Now, the Food and Drug Administration did give permission for large-scale Phase 3 clinical trials of the drug, a final step before the possible approval of ecstasy as a prescription drug. I hate calling it ecstasy because once you do, it just immediately makes you think of like a party drug that's been cut with speed and rat poison. But
you get glow sticks when you're prescribed it? Oh, see, that's what people think. That's the stupid stereotype.
Well, look, it's not really a stereotype because that is what appeals to you when you're on MDMA. Oh, when you're on the purest kind. Like, it's the best thing in the world. But anyway, so look, the researchers here...
It's like touching God himself.
Not like I know anything about that. But the good thing about this is the researchers are very much aware that this is a drug that would potentially lead to a lot of abuse. And so if this becomes legalized as a medicinal avenue in which someone can get treated for a mental illness like PTSD, it would only be administered like at a clinic with a mental health professional giving the individual the drug and monitoring them as they're going through the high. Now, let me give you some more information. Dr. Charles Marmar. Is his name really Charles Marmar? Yeah, it is. Okay. Dr. Charles Marmar, who's a great guy, says if they can keep getting good results, it will be of great use. PTSD can be very hard to treat. Our best therapies right now don't help 30 to 40% of people, so we need more options.
Yeah.
There are so many soldiers right now that are suffering from PTSD, so many vets that are suffering from PTSD, and they feel like they have no choice at this point. And so to know that there is another possibility in treating them makes me feel really happy.
Totally, yeah. And look, I mean, if you go back enough decades, that's what MDMA was used for, was for research into possible medicinal applications and things like that, and it apparently had them. It's so easy to brand a drug as either purely entertainment or having some good side effect. I mean, we know that there's crossover potential. Lots of people get addicted to painkillers, not because it dulls pain, but because it dulls everything, and that's awesome. Like, we understand that certain drugs cross over, but others have this weird stigma that you have to fight for literally decades to kill. Like, weed, for instance, is such a benign substance in comparison to a lot of the drugs that you can get prescribed to you right now that are heavily at risk of becoming addictive or have deadly side effects if you cross them with another drug or something like that. But for some reason, weed has this lingering stereotype. Now, I'm of the belief, at least right now, that I think effectively all drugs should be legal. If you want to destroy your body or your brain, not only should you be able to do that, but you can do that. I can go down to the store and I can buy a container of bleach and I can drink it until my eyes bleed if I want to. Who are you to stop me from taking ecstasy? I never understood that. But if you're interested in possibly trying things like this sort of drug does concern me more than something like weed. Like something that actually changes, I understand all drugs act on your brain, but something whose principal use is to affect hormones in your brain and cause like them to be shot out at high velocities into your brain. That does scare me a little bit, but there are people who desperately need it.
Yeah, look, there are people who desperately need it, and understand that this isn't something that's meant to be used as a long-term treatment. Now, there, of course, is research behind MDMA being destructive to the brain if it's used for a long period of time, if it's used regularly for a long period of time. But that's not what would happen here. So the New York Times wrote a great piece on this. I highly recommend that you guys read it because it also profiles some specific cases. And there was another man who was a firefighter, and he had dealt with so many gory situations that he suffered from PTSD. And so his wife was like, he would have been dead. He would have taken his own life. He was planning on jumping in front of a bus and taking his own life. But he was willing to try MDMA. He did, and he's like, it helped me kind of cope with my inner demons from a different perspective, and I don't really want to take the drug ever again. I feel great, I feel happy, and that's it. And I think that's super important. There needs to be regulation on this drug, just like there needs to be regulation with any drug that's legalized. But I think that this is a good first step toward a different avenue to treat people with this mental illness. Anyway, all right, let's take our first break in the second hour, and when we come back, more stories, including the notion of being a work martyr and whether or not it actually helps you earn more money. Stick around. I'm super excited because we have different levels of members. They pay $10 a month, but there are some members that pay a little more. Executive producers, for instance. My favorite thing about executive producers is that we have quarterly calls with them. I love that I'm getting a little transparency and I'm knowing what you guys like and dislike, ideas on how to improve the show, topics that maybe we haven't heard of yet and you really want us to cover. We have so much respect for you because of the fact that you keep us independent and allow us to be uncensored, unfiltered, without worrying about corporate sponsors breathing down our necks and telling us what we can and can't say. So if you want to be a member, obviously no pressure. You can go ahead and join by going to tytnetwork.com/join. I'm going to ask some uncomfortable questions. The first topic that I said that we would discuss a little more is masturbation.
And then I was swimming in a hazelnut river.
Are you sure you're not doing mushrooms? Oh my god, I can achieve an orgasm by myself.
Fuck that, I am going to talk about it because there should be no shame. I think a lot about that because I love life.
That openness led to amazing.
And I keep saying to everybody, I got to go call my wife. I figured that was a good excuse so people can't say, hey, don't call your wife. I'm going to release. Listen.
It's so weird because at that moment I felt this, and it smelled like lavender.
At the end, you get to do a check. Nice job. If you're up for the uncurved, do a rock the world.
Mayweather will knock out Pacquiao. Floyd beats his wife.
Welcome back to TYT, Anna and John with you. All right, so TYT Lives. The Squirrel Mafia says, Anna, if you feel that need to buy a gun to feel safe in your country, it's time to move. Come to Canada, we are civilized.
What about some other self-defense item other than a gun?
Someone, one of our members sent me pepper spray, so I carry that in my bag. I have that.
I have a taser you can use.
Do you really have a taser?
Yeah. I thought I bought one for you. I bought one for a coworker for a present, and they were cheap, so I bought two. So I bought two.
Oh, awesome. No, I'm buying a taser, too.
Okay.
So the taser...
You're going to go akimbo after?
No, the taser and the pepper spray I will carry with me in my purse. The gun, I'm keeping at home.
Yeah?
Yeah, and hopefully I'll never have to use. And then I'm also going to keep a gun, like, in my car for those, like, LA road rage moments.
Just to, like, hey, go! I like new shooting, rootin', tootin' Anna.
I do not want to ever have to use that gun, believe me.
Oh,
believe me.
Crossbow.
No, John.
You can't just shoot through walls or something.
Your mama says, random thought, is Jake currently getting that haircut he so desperately wanted yesterday on the show? Hashtag deep thoughts.
Did he really want to?
Yeah, his hair had gotten long, which I think makes him look younger. But he hated it. He's like, I can't wait to get a haircut. So, no, he's having some sort of meeting somewhere.
Yeah.
Okay.
San Francisco.
Yeah. You know way more about what Jake is doing.
I watched his video about the carrier thing he talks about. He's at the airport.
Oh,
he's looking for the plane. That's all.
all right. Okay. Does it make sense to be a so-called work martyr in order to get some recognition and possibly higher pay within your company? Now, first of all, what exactly is a work martyr? Well, apparently it is a person who doesn't take breaks or use vacation time out of fear that he or she may be seen as replaceable or undedicated to the job. Now, roughly 40% of employees desire to be seen as a work martyr by their employer. However, 86% of employees surveyed believed it was a bad thing to be seen as a work martyr by their families.
Yeah, totally.
So, that makes all the sense in the world. Now, interestingly enough, I know that, the conventional wisdom says, show up first, leave last, work nonstop, and you're going to get the recognition you want and the recognition you deserve. But that's actually not the case. By the way, millennials are the biggest offenders of this.
Of being work martyrs.
Of being work martyrs, probably because, excuse me, many of them have graduated into a bad economy, and so they feel lucky to have a job, and they're worried about losing their jobs, and so they go out of their way to kind of overcompensate when they don't even really need to.
Maybe they should be afraid.
And by the way, that's not based on my own perspective or speculation. That's based on surveys that have been taken. There's Project Time Off that did a survey on this, and they found that millennials are especially more willing to be work martyrs, and they think that it benefits them, but it doesn't. Now, work martyrs, it has been proven by studies, make less money, and they earn less, and they receive less bonuses. Okay, so why does that happen? Now, 13% more likely, so they're 13% more likely to feel stressed out in their work life compared to more balanced employees, and 20% more likely to feel stress at home. So employers are like, this is not a good thing. When you're overworking yourself and you're saying yes to everything when you...
I wonder, I haven't looked at the raw data, but that is one thing I would consider. I know that anecdotes don't matter compared to the statistical data, but I do think that at least early on when I was a work martyr, I don't say no to things almost ever, but I don't work the crazy hours that I used to. Like, I used to like to be in basically first or very early, and then stay until very late, and usually it wasn't up to me because I had to edit clips after we did the show from 6 to 8. So for the first, year, I didn't take almost any days off at all, including on the weekends. And I like to think that helped me, personally. I think people saw that. Now, we have a very different sort of workplace than most places, where we care about each other and we notice the work that we do.
Do we?
I think so. I fear that in larger corporate workplaces, it can simply be expected, and if they realize, oh, his default setting is he'll work 80 hours a day, or she'll work 80 hours a week, that they just accept that, and they don't think of it as being impressive.
Do we work in the same company? Are you kidding me right now?
I don't know what you're talking about.
No, I was gonna. My commentary on this would be that we at TYT are encouraged by our employers to be work martyrs.
No, I agree. I agree. But I think that if you do all that work, I'm not saying that we get I'm not saying you get monetarily compensated, because clearly we don't. I'm joking, somewhat. But I do think they notice it. They at least give you a tip of the hat. Which is nice.
Fair. They do notice it. You get the tip of the hat. We are 100% work martyrs at TYT.
I'm not as much of a work martyr as I used to be. I'm just keeping it real. I'm gonna start working more
during the weekends. You travel during the weekends.
Yeah, but not
TYT
usually,
on Fusion.
That's only for 12 weeks.
You're insane. No.
There are people out there that edit that stay until 8, 9 o'clock every night. Those are work martyrs.
Yes, they are.
And they're here earlier than
TYT, culture of work martyrs.
That's
no
true.
question about it. Anyways, now we've oddly made it personal.
Sorry. Yeah.
But
that's what we do on the show.
So related to this though is how unproductive you become when you lack sleep, right? So Rand Corporation, Rand Europe specifically, did this huge, extensive study on lost productivity and lost money as a result of the workforce not getting enough sleep. And they compared the United States to various industrialized countries, okay? And here's what they found. Sleep-deprived people, and this is not anything to argue with, this is fact-based, have higher mortality rates, they miss more days of work, they're less productive in the office, and they also struggle to keep up in school, right? So if you are sleep deprived, you are more likely to take time off, and your company loses money as a result of that, right?
I'm sure you've experienced it. When you're in a funk or whatever, it's harder to get your work done.
Absolutely.
So I have to ask you, are you prepared to apologize to Ariana Huffington? Apparently sleep is the most important thing. After all, you naysayer, you.
Look, no. Ariana Huffington is right. We do need to sleep more.
Okay, good.
No, I'm not mad at I'm mad at her, right? It's just difficult to take the advice from someone who is in a different socioeconomic status from someone such as myself.
Just get 8 to 10 hours of sleep a day on a bed made of pure gold and cash.
According to Rand, the U.S. loses approximately $411 billion a year as a result of sleep deprivation by its workforce. So these are all things to keep in mind. Take care of yourself. I think that it's actually a sign of strength when you stand up to someone and you say, nah, I don't think that's the right project for me. You need to be kind of specific in what your goals are. Where do you see yourself within the company? Where do you see yourself in your career? And be hyper-focused on that. Don't say yes to a bunch of projects that don't make sense or what you want to do.
Sadly, people lose their jobs, right? I'm sure we've mentioned this. And then if someone's sleep deprived, if they're missing work, if they're taking vacation, if they're falling asleep at their desk, supervisor comes up and goes, what are you doing? And you start getting written up, you get in trouble, eventually you get fired, and then they replace you with another person. In certain industries, you just cycle in a new person. Or it's hire a new kid who will only pay $25,000 a year. Don't do it. Drain their ass for 5 years.
Yeah.
That's why we fired Ben Minkley. He said no one time. We're like, get your ass to the curb.
I think one of the things that everyone should keep in the back of their mind when they start working at a new company, of course.
I just want them to get tweets about it.
Anyway. Start thinking of ways to make yourself irreplaceable, right? So it's find ways to sabotage the
Change
company.
the passwords to things. Don't tell people what they are.
Exactly. Yeah, stuff like that. If you are...
Chain yourself to your desk.
By the way, I can't emphasize this enough. If you are doing something, if your career is dependent on clients and you have clients through some sort of corporate situation or whatever, let's say you're a hairstylist and you work for a salon, and the salon has all the information on all the clients. Don't let that happen. That's a bad decision, right? You should have all the information on your clients, right?
Yeah.
That way, if you move, you have that. That's like the most valuable thing you can have. So just find ways to protect yourself, obviously, and don't be a work martyr. That's my advice. But I get it. I get what you're saying.
Yeah, and you get fired for not being a work martyr. If you're like, I'm not taking that project. No, I'm going home to get some sleep. They'll be like, stay home. It sucks. I'm not saying you're wrong.
But I think that if you look, you have to stand out. By being awesome. Yeah. Anyway, fun talk. Do certain parts of the brain light up? Is there more electrical activity in certain parts of the brain? I love studies like this because it's not reliant on self-reporting, it's reliant on MRA scans. And from these MRA scans, researchers have found that a religious experience can be just as addictive as love or using addictive drugs. So the researchers in this case are from the University of Utah School of Medicine, and they're reporting that religious and spiritual experiences activate reward circuits in the brain, the same that are associated with feelings of love and drug-induced euphoric states. Now, they did this study on 19 young but very, very devout Mormons. These are individuals who did missionary work, 12 males, 7 females. They're very much dedicated to their religion. And so what they did was have these exercises or do these exercises where it evokes, spiritual feelings, perfect way of putting it. And to trigger these religious feelings, participants were given 4 tasks over the course of an hour while their brains were scanned. The exercises were designed to emulate the Mormon religious experience, which included prayer, scripture study, all sorts of other torturous things, audiovisual presentations of religious music with images of biblical scenes and other strongly religious content and quotes from church leaders, okay? So they're doing all this religious stuff, all these religious shenanigans with them, and they're scanning the brains and they're trying to see which part of your brain lights up. Here's what happened. When our study participants were instructed to think about a savior, about being with their families for eternity, about their heavenly rewards, their brains and their bodies physically responded.
Which part?
Okay. So they experienced an elevated heart rate, so there's that, deepening of breath, and also activation of the nucleus accumbens, which is the brain's reward center. They also experienced increased alertness. So, by the way, there was also activation of the ventromedial prefrontal cortex, which is the part of the brain. It's a complex part of the brain, but decision making is an important part of it.
As we all know.
Well, it's just so you guys
I'm not
understand
Kirsten
the study.
Storia, I don't know. Okay, that's interesting. And they said in the reporting that some of them, or I think they said many of them, were driven to tears by the experience. And bear in mind, they're in an fMRI. Like, this is not just, like, surrounded by a beautiful, holy place. Like, you're strapped into this thing, like you're in Clockwork Orange, and they're still driven to tears by thoughts of staying with their family forever and a savior and all of that. Which is interesting. And look, there are things that have caused me to tear up. So there are movies, like the end of Braveheart. I'm not getting through that without tearing up at the end when Robert the Bruce, does his thing. Watching the movie Homeward Bound, I'm gonna cry. So I get being moved by something that you're thinking about or watching, but the interesting distinction is that they think it's true.
No. I think that you're comparing apples and oranges. I think for them...
Well, they were shown images and listened to music. I mean, they were shown art.
No, I know, but you're talking about an emotional movie that, it pulls on your heartstrings and things. Like, I get that. But for them, this is, like, the religious experience, it's like a drug, right? Like, it's for them, it's a reward. Like their brain is rewarding them for feeling this way, so it becomes addictive, right? And so it's a little different. I don't know if I'm doing a good job in articulating the distinction.
Sometimes feel like, I don't know, like, I know we're all one species, but sometimes it doesn't feel like we are. Because for whatever reason, and I grew up going to church, both Lutheran churches and Roman Catholic churches. I went. My family ostensibly believed in God or whatever. My grandfather, at least on one side, still does, a very liberal Christian. And yet I look at it and I'm like, oh, that's not real. Like, it's not even a process I have to go through in my brain. And for some people, it is so clearly true that it drives them to tears just thinking about it, even while strapped in medical equipment. That's such a different perspective. It's amazing to me.
When I also grew up going to church every Sunday, I went to church from until I was like 19. But I think I started when I was like 5 or something.
A long time.
Yeah, so a long time. Every Sunday, went to church for Easter with my family. Like my family's very religious, and I remember going to church and one time with my grandma, and I remember her kneeling down and just like sobbing, and I could not understand it. So I don't know why it is that it impacts certain people in a very different way.
Yeah.
But it might have to do with life experiences. It might have to do with, this need to have faith in an afterlife. Remember, accepting the fact that there's no afterlife is a very difficult thing for some people to do. Like, to think that once you're dead, you're gone. Like, that there's no soul, there's no nothing.
Yeah,
that's a difficult thing for a lot of people. So, look, I understand the allure of religion, and I don't mind religious people as long as their religion doesn't dictate my life, as long as their religion doesn't dictate our lawmakers and our policies. Like, as long as you're not causing harm to other people, right? If you're having this profound experience because of religious scripture or whatever it is, do you, boo. Just don't allow that to dictate the lives of other people.
Yeah, and regardless of the religion, this is about Mormonism, but we feel that way about all religions.
Yeah, exactly.
Main problem, yes. But when people want to start telling other people about the good news, it's to get everyone else to feel as good as you do. And John, don't ever tell us about Homeward Bound. I'm never letting you live that down. I can't wait.
That is a good-ass movie.
I can't wait to always tell you
live stream idea. I know he does it. He likes dogs more than he used to. I'm going to sit him down and watch it with him. We're going to get popcorn. I guarantee not a dry eye in the house on either side of the camera. Mm-hmm. That movie is sad. They're in mortal danger constantly.
I love how you compared watching that movie to, like, the religious experiences of these devout Mormons.
Well, this is going to play into what he's saying, but it's because when I think of, like, tearing up during a movie, that's what leaps to mind. That movie is sad as shit.
Woo! I haven't seen it, so.
Their animals are always so close to death, and they always protect each other.
They're animals?
Just like us in our flock.
I tell you what, man, when Air Bud came out, I thought Dr. Dong.
It's not the same thing at all.
I had a big high school game, and in order for me to win, we had to really get determined. So I watched Air Bud, and I really got hyped up.
Okay, Jer, is there a movie that has made you tear up?
No.
Never. Nothing.
I don't watch enough movies.
Braveheart?
Maybe there's something. No. Oh, you know what? I got in my feelings in, what's the Will Smith movie where he saves his kid?
Oh my god, I cried like a baby through that. Pursuit of Happiness.
Yeah.
Such a great movie.
Wait a second. Have you seen Inside Out?
Oh my god,
Have you seen Inside Out? You know what I'm talking about?
Yes.
You know what I'm talking about.
Yes.
The song? Oh my god.
You talking about when she loses her imaginary friend?
Oh my god.
Yes.
I don't want to cry right now.
A robot. He's not a person. He's a lizard person. Confirmed. Yes.
It is an alien force out of this world.
It was a great movie, yes. Anyway, I'm sorry.
Alright, you know what? I'm going to fit in one more story. Let's do it. Let's do it. Okay.
Great.
A woman in Los Angeles was the victim of brutal vandalism of her vehicle. Apparently this happened in the middle of the night as she parked her car in Koreatown. And I want to show you guys this video reported by a local CBS affiliate so you kind of get a sense of the extent of the damage and why I want to do this story in the first place. Take a look.
Around 3 a.m. Friday, this woman broke off the windshield wiper and used it, along with a pipe and piece of wood, to carve letters and words all over the car. But she wasn't finished. She got on top and started jumping, causing more damage on the roof. After taking a break on the hood, she came back and tore off the gas cap. Next, she ripped out the grill. Stacy also saw that the woman had flattened a tire with this piece of wood that had nails wedged in it. The vandal stayed at it for 6 hours.
I'm angry, I'm hurt, frustrated, and at the same time, I understand that she has a mental problem.
After a business owner finally called police around 9 a.m., the LAPD took her into custody. Stacy is upset because several people saw what was going on but didn't do enough to stop her.
They would come by, stop, back up, take pictures, video, and just take off.
What's making this even harder for Stacy is that she just lost her job and only has liability insurance.
Wow. That makes me so sad.
Can you imagine seeing it and then knowing the videos out there? So she has an Indiegogo.
She
so
does.
I assume she's probably made a lot of money. That generally happens.
She has a GoFundMe page. I don't know where it stands right now, but her name is Stacy Milinoff. Omelinoff. Please look her up, and if you can, help her out because this is just devastating. The reason why I want to do this story, even though it's a hyper-local story, is because it says something about society at large, where we're not willing to help one another out when there's clearly wrongdoing. Like, you see someone's car being vandalized for 6 hours, and you don't do it. Like, you don't even have to get involved. Like, you don't have to tell her to stop. You don't have to interact with her whatsoever. Just call the cops.
They should call the cops. I think it's this weird thing where I don't think that it's not that we're willing to help. I think that if it was 2 people and one said, hey, shouldn't we call the cops? You'd be like, oh yeah, we should call the cops. It's like this desire in America to not get involved. Like, whatever is happening on that car with that person, that's their thing. Maybe it's their car that they're vandalizing. I don't want to get involved in it. And that's a psychological thing that all humans have, a species thing where, like, there was a case in New York where someone had been stabbed and they were like laying and dying, and all these people could hear them in the courtyard of this building, but nobody helped. Or someone was dying from like a gunshot on a sidewalk, and all these people were watching, but nobody was doing anything because everybody thinks, oh, someone else is probably taking care of this. I don't need to. And it's hard to get past that as an individual. Like, you should, of course, help. You know that you should help, but you don't want to get involved.
Please get involved.
Please get involved, yeah.
And by the way, it's simple. You just call the cops. And maybe someone has already called, and it was unnecessary for you to do so, but that's okay. Better safe than sorry.
Yeah.
You know, let's protect each other.
Yes.
Like, I know that we're in this weird climate right now where everyone's fighting and everyone hates each other and everyone is very focused on the ideology as opposed to the fact that we're all human beings. But let's please protect each other in any way that we can.
Isn't mental illness like amazing?
Well,
like, here's 6 hours. You'd have to pay me so much to get me to vandalize a car for 6 hours.
I don't know. After the election, I feel like 6 hours, like, hitting things and like it sounds great. Like,
that's a long time.
It is. I've been wanting to take a kickboxing class. I feel like that'd be really good. But no, mental illness is a serious problem. And by the way, in Los Angeles, there is an epidemic of homeless individuals who have serious mental illnesses, right? And so we're not dealing with that. We're just pretending like it doesn't exist.
That's true.
I think that's also part of this problem.
Yeah.
All right, guys, that does it for our show. If you're a member, stick around. There will be a post game for you, and for everyone else, there will be 2 interviews today. So, check it out. 2 IT interviews. If you're a member, you get to check it live. Interview starts at 9:15 p.m. Eastern Time. Josh Fox, director of Gaslamp, is the Gaslamp. Sorry, Gaslamp Killer is a musician. Anyway, Gaslamp. I'm interviewing him, so check
She's
it out.
interviewing Gaslamp Killer at 9:15 p.m.
All right, I'll see you tomorrow. Bye.